The rain-slicked streets of Eldridge Hollow gleamed under the sodium lamps, turning the night into a blurred watercolor of shadows and desperation. At 2:17 a.m., in the dim glow of the Mercy General Emergency Room, a lone ambulance screeched to a halt outside the loading bay. Inside, paramedics wrestled with a massive figure slumped on the gurney, Jacob Hale, a weathered biker in his late 40s, his leather vest torn and bloodied from a crash that had left his Harley twisted like modern sculpture on the outskirts of town. His breaths came in ragged gasps, a shard of metal glinting from his side, and the metallic tang of blood mixed with the acrid scent of burnt rubber clinging to his clothes. Nurses scattered like leaves in a storm, but one stood firm, Emily Reynolds, a 32-year-old ER veteran with calloused hands and eyes shadowed by years of unspoken losses. She had lost her brother to a similar wreck a decade ago, a promise whispered in his hospital bed. "Take care of the road warriors, Em. They don't have anyone else," that she had buried under shifts and silence. Tonight, that promise clawed its way back. Emily's gloved hands moved with the precision of muscle memory, barking orders to the hesitant team. "Get me Oneg and a trauma kit, now!" The attending physician, Dr. Harlan Voss, hovered nearby, his face a mask of bureaucratic caution. Jacob's chart was already flagged. Affiliations with the Iron Oath Motorcycle Club, whispers of troublemakers, in a town that viewed bikers as relics of a wilder era. As Emily clamped the bleed and stabilized his vitals, the monitors beeping a frantic rhythm, Voss pulled her aside. "Reynolds, this one's a liability. Club ties mean questions we don't want. Stabilize and transfer to county. Protocol." But protocol be damned. Emily saw the flicker in Jacob's eyes. The same haunted plea her brother had worn before the lights went out. She ignored Voss, threading an IV and murmuring, "Hang on, big guy, you've got stories left to tell." By dawn, the ER hummed with its usual chaos, flu cases and fender benders. But Emily's world tilted. Jacob stabilized, his color returning under the harsh fluorescence, the scent of antiseptic now laced with the faint ozone of his leathers drying on a chair. He gripped her wrist weakly as she checked his dressings, his voice a gravelly rumble. You didn't have to. Most folks cross the street when they see us coming." Emily met his gaze, her own scars, a faint line across her jaw from a long-ago family fallout, itching under the surface. "Promises are like tattoos, mister. They fade, but they don't disappear." Jacob's laugh was a wheeze, but it carried weight, a bond forged in the quiet hours. He was no stranger to lost causes. The Iron Oath had pulled him from the abyss after his own war scars, both visible and not, left him adrift. In that moment, as the first light pierced the blinds, he made his vow. "Owe you one, nurse. More than one." Words spread like exhaust on the wind. Jacob's phone, salvaged from his pocket, buzzed with calls from his crew scattered across the state. By 7 a.m., as Emily clocked out for a rare day off, she felt the weight of eyes on her. Colleagues whispering, Voss's glare from the nurse's station. She shrugged into her coat, the fabric heavy with the night's residue, and stepped into the crisp morning air. Eldridge Hollow awoke slowly, the distant hum of traffic underscoring the town's facade of normalcy. But normalcy shattered when her pager went off. "Report to admin. Immediate." Her stomach knotted. She knew the drill. Saving Jacob had crossed lines, bending rules for a high-risk patient, delaying the transfer. In the sterile conference room, Voss and the hospital director laid it out cold. Termination, effective immediately. Liability, they called it, their voices echoing off beige walls. Emily's hands trembled as she signed the exit papers, the ink blurring like rain on glass. No severance, no references, just a box of her belongings dumped at the curb, the humiliation burning hotter than any fever she'd ever treated. She drove home in her battered sedan, the wipers slapping against a drizzle that mirrored her mood. The radio crackled with local news, another corruption probe at City Hall, whispers of officials turning blind eyes to the powerful. But it all felt distant, a cynical backdrop to her unraveling. Emily's apartment was a modest refuge on the edge of town, walls lined with faded photos. Her brother grinning beside his bike, a younger her in scrubs at graduation. She collapsed onto the couch, the springs creaking like old bones, and let the tears come. The promise to her brother, shattered. Her career, gone. In a world that prized procedure over people, what did loyalty even mean? She dozed fitfully, dreams tangled with the roar of engines and the sting of betrayal. Hours later, a thunderous rumble shook her from sleep. Peering through the blinds, Emily's breath caught. The street outside her rundown complex was alive, no, transformed. Motorcycles lined the block like sentinels, chrome gleaming under the afternoon sun, engines idling with a low, unified growl that vibrated through the pavement. 50, then 80, then over 100 bikes. Their riders in vests emblazoned with the Iron Oath emblem, a fist clutching a broken chain, forming a phalanx that stretched to the horizon. At the front, Jacob Hale stood propped on a cane, bandaged but unbowed, his crew flanking him like a brotherhood forged in fire. He spotted her at the window and raised a hand, the gesture simple yet seismic. Word had rippled through the club. Emily's sacrifice demanded reciprocity. They weren't here for vengeance, but for justice, the kind that honored the unspoken code of the road. As the convoy revved in unison, a dust cloud rising like a banner, Emily stepped outside, the air thick with the scent of oil and resolve. Jacob limped forward, his eyes locking on hers. "Told you I owed you. This is just the start. The oath doesn't forget." Behind him, engines roared in affirmation, a symphony of loyalty that drowned out the town's distant sirens. Emily's heart pounded, the weight of isolation lifting like fog at sunrise. She had saved one life. Now an army rode for hers. But as the first bikes peeled out toward Mercy General, tires kicking gravel, she sensed the deeper currents: corruption in the hospital board, ties to local officials who profited from cutting corners. This wasn't just gratitude, it was a reckoning, a promise renewed in the thunder of the ride. The procession swelled, drawing stares from neighbors and the curious. Emily climbed onto the back of Jacob's borrowed bike, her arms wrapping around his waist as they joined the fray. The wind whipped her hair, carrying whispers of what lay ahead. Protests at the hospital gates, demands for her reinstatement, exposures of the rot that had cost her everything. In the rearview mirror, Eldridge Hollow shrank, but the fire in her chest grew. Redemption wasn't a solo ride, it was a convoy, unbreakable. And as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of amber and steel, Emily realized her brother's words had come full circle. The road warriors had found their nurse, and together they'd carved justice from the asphalt. The asphalt blurred beneath the thundering herd of motorcycles as they surged toward Mercy General, a steel river carving through Eldridge Hollow's sleepy veins. Emily clung to Jacob's back, the vibration of the engine pulsing through her like a second heartbeat, the wind tearing at her clothes with a raw, liberating fury. The scent of hot rubber and exhaust mingled with the faint, earthy tang of impending rain, and ahead the hospital loomed, a squat fortress of glass and concrete, its emergency lights flickering like wary eyes in the late afternoon haze. Jacob's crew fanned out in formation, 100 riders strong now, their vests catching the sun in flashes of black leather and embroidered oaths. No horns blared, no engines screamed. This was a measured advance, the growl of their machines a low promise of unyielding solidarity. Jacob twisted slightly, his voice cutting through the roar. They think they can bury this under paperwork and handshakes with the suits, but the oath, we dig deeper. Emily nodded against his shoulder, her mind racing back to the admin room's sterile chill, Voss's smug dismissal echoing like a bad diagnosis. She'd bent rules to save Jacob, ignoring the transfer order, prioritizing his life over liability forms, but in their eyes, that made her the problem. Now, as the convoy rounded the final bend, tires humming on the cracked pavement, she felt the shift from victim to vanguard. The hospital parking lot stretched empty before them, but already security lights blinked on, shadows stirring behind the curtains. They rolled to a halt in a precise arc, encircling the main entrance without blocking it, a show of restraint that spoke louder than chaos. Engines cut one by one, the sudden silence amplifying the crunch of boots on gravel and the distant wail of an approaching siren. Jacob dismounted first, steadying himself with a grimace that hid the fresh ache in his side. The bandages beneath his shirt, a white flag of survival. Emily followed, her legs unsteady on the sun-warmed ground, the crowd of riders forming a protective semicircle around them. At their head stood Marcus Kane, Jacob's second in command, a broad-shouldered veteran with salt-and-pepper hair and eyes like polished flint. He'd ridden in from the next county over, drawn by the urgent texts that painted Emily as kin. "Boss!" Marcus rumbled, clasping Jacob's forearm. "We're here for the nurse." And whatever rot forced her out. Word had travelled fast through the Iron Oaths network. Old war buddies turned brothers on the road, mechanics and truckers who'd shared campfires under starlit skies. They weren't outlaws in the Hollywood sense. Most held day jobs, mended fences with the law through quiet donations and community rides. But loyalty, that was their creed, etched deeper than any tattoo. Emily scanned the faces, grizzled men in their 50s nursing coffee from thermoses, younger riders with fresh ink and haunted gazes, even a few women from allied crews, their ponytails whipping in the breeze. One, a sharp-eyed mechanic named Lena, nodded at Emily with quiet respect. "Saved one of ours. We save you back." Inside the hospital, the boardroom buzzed with tension. Dr. Voss paced the carpeted floor, his tie askew, phone pressed to his ear as he barked updates to the director. "They're here, over 100 of them, blocking the lot like some damn protest." The director, a portly man named Harlan Greer, with a penchant for golf outings with city councillors, mopped his brow. Mercy General wasn't just a healing hub. It was a cog in Eldridge Hollow's underbelly, where corners were cut on supplies to pad pockets, and high-risk patients like Jacob were shuttled away to avoid scrutiny. Emily's defiance had cracked that facade, shining light on the delays that killed more than they cured. "Call the cops," Greer snapped. "Disperse them. We can't have this circus scaring off donors." But the oath had anticipated the pushback. As patrol cars screeched into view, lights flashing blue and red against the fading sky, Jacob stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. The lead officer, a weary sergeant named Tyler Grant, who'd crossed paths with the club during flood relief rides, climbed out with measured caution. "Jacob Hale, what's this about?" Jacob's voice carried clear and steady, the pain in his ribs forgotten in the heat of the moment. "About a nurse who saved my life when your protocols would have let me bleed out. Emily Reynolds, fired for doing right. We're here to set it straight. No trouble. Just truth." Emily watched from the edge, her pulse sinking with the low murmur of the crowd. Tyler's eyes flicked to her, recognition dawning. He'd seen her in the ER during night shifts, hands steady amid the storm. A beat passed, the air thick with the scent of cooling engines and tension, before he sighed. "Stand down, boys. Let's talk." The standoff eased, officers mingling uneasily with riders, but the real battle brewed inside. Jacob turned to Emily, his grip firm on her arm. "Your word started this. Now ours seals it." She swallowed, the weight of their faith pressing like a warm blanket over old wounds. Her brother's promise to care for the forgotten had evolved. These weren't just road warriors, they were her shield against the system's cold calculus. As dusk painted the lot in deepening shadows, the group coalesced into action. Marcus coordinated with a few riders to draft a petition. Their voices a steady hum of demands: reinstatement for Emily, an audit of patient protocols, exposure of the board's shortcuts. Lena handed out water bottles, her calloused hands brushing Emily's in silent solidarity. "We've lost too many to places like this," she said softly. "Corners cut, lives lost, time to ride it out." Emily nodded, the knot in her chest loosening for the first time since the termination. This wasn't vengeance, it was vindication, a moral force rolling like thunder across the horizon. Yet beneath the unity, doubts flickered. Voss watched from a second-story window, his face twisted in calculation, already dialing contacts in the mayor's office. The corruption ran deeper: kickbacks from suppliers, falsified reports that buried malpractice suits. Jacob sensed it too, pulling Emily aside as the first stars pricked the sky. "This ride's just warming up. They push, we push back harder. For you, for all of us." The engines idled again, a promise humming in the dark, ready to surge. Emily met his gaze, her resolve hardening like chrome under fire. The oath's loyalty wasn't blind. It was forged in the fires of shared scars, a family chosen on the open road. And tonight it promised to rewrite her story, 1 mile at a time. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The night air thickened with the scent of diesel and determination as the Iron Oath riders held their ground in the Mercy General parking lot, their silhouettes etched against the sodium glow of security lamps. Emily stood at the periphery, her arms crossed against the chill that seeped through her thin jacket, watching the tentative dialogues unfold between leather-clad brothers and uniformed officers. Tyler Grant, the sergeant, had holstered his radio after a hushed conversation with his team, his stance shifting from rigid to reluctant ally. The Oath's reputation preceded them, not as marauders, but as the ones who showed up when floods swallowed homes or fires claimed barns. Their engines a lifeline in the hollow's forgotten corners. Jacob leaned against his bike, the cane forgotten at his side, his bandaged frame a testament to the fragility beneath the bravado. Marcus Kane paced the gravel, his boots crunching like muffled thunder, coordinating the riders into smaller groups. "Petition first," he directed, his voice a low baritone that cut through the murmurs. "Names, signatures, every soul who's felt the bite of this place's shortcuts." Lena, the mechanic with grease-stained knuckles and a ponytail tied back like a battle flag, passed out clipboards scavenged from saddlebags, her eyes meeting Emily's with a nod that carried the weight of shared resolve. Emily took one, her fingers tracing the paper's edge, the faint ink of her own signature blurring in the dim light. She thought of her brother, Ethan, his laugh echoing from those faded photos back home, how he'd ridden with a crew much like this, pulling her from the wreckage of their fractured family after their parents' long silence. "Family's what you build on the road," he'd said once, engine humming between them. Now, that echo fueled her, turning grief into grit. Inside the hospital, the boardroom's tension coiled like a spring under pressure. Dr. Harlan Voss slammed his phone down, the clatter echoing off the polished table, his face flushed beneath the harsh overheads. Harlan Greer, the director, steepled his fingers, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air-conditioned chill. "This isn't just a stunt, Voss. Those riders, they're connected, words already hitting the firehouses and garages across the county." Voss sneered, pacing to the window where the convoy's chrome gleamed like a challenge. "Let the cops handle it. Emily Reynolds was a loose cannon, bending rules for that biker trash. If we fold now, the audits start, and our arrangements unravel." Greer's eyes darted to the door, the unspoken truth hanging heavy. The hospital's ledgers hid more than overtime discrepancies. Suppliers paid kickbacks for subpar meds, reports doctored to dodge lawsuits, all funneled to council pockets that kept the oversight blind. Emily's stand had pried the lid, and the oath's arrival threatened to shatter it. Outside, the petition grew, riders adding not just names but stories, whispers of delayed care for veterans, corners cut on rural clinics that left families adrift. One rider, a lanky veteran named Samuel Reed, with a prosthetic leg hidden under his jeans, gripped the pen tightly. Lost my buddy to a transfer like they planned for Jacob, waited too long and poof, gone. His voice cracked, the pain raw under the stars. Drawing nods from the circle, Emily listened, her chest tightening. These weren't faceless allies, but mirrors of her own losses, bound by the invisible threads of promises kept in the dead of night. Jacob caught her eye, limping closer, the scent of his leathers, worn earth and faint motor oil grounding her. You see it now? This ain't about one life. It's the whole damn chain. As the clock ticked past midnight, the standoff evolved. Tyler Grant approached Jacob again, his cruiser idling nearby, lights now off to ease the edge. Captain's on my line, says to keep it civil, but he's hearing you out tomorrow. No promises. Jacob clasped the sergeant's shoulder, a gesture born of mutual respect forged in past crises. Appreciate it, Tyler. We've ridden together before. Floods don't care about badges. The officer glanced at Emily, his expression softening. Reynolds, you built a rep in that ER. Steady hands. This crew's got your back. Don't let the suits grind you down. She managed a nod, the words a balm on the raw wound of her firing, the humiliation of that curbside box fading like exhaust in the breeze. But ripples of unease stirred within the ranks. A younger rider, Nathan Cole, fidgeted at the edge, his fresh vest still stiff with newness. What if they lawyer up? Hospitals got deep pockets, city ties. Marcus clapped a hand on his shoulder, steady as an anchor. Then we ride deeper. We've faced worse, wars, wrecks, the kind that scar deeper than skin. Emily felt the pull of doubt herself, the system's vastness looming like storm clouds on the horizon. Yet Jacob's presence anchored her, his quiet strength, a reminder that redemption came not in grand gestures, but in the steady turn of wheels. As the group huddled closer, sharing thermoses of strong coffee that steamed in the cool air, Lena pulled Emily aside. My sister worked nights here once, saw the shortcuts firsthand. Lost a patient to bad stock. We're not storming gates, we're lighting the path. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the lot in soft greys, the engines silent but humming with latent power. The petition now bulged with over 200 signatures, a testament scrawled in hurried hands. Jacob addressed the crew, his voice rising above the first bird calls. This nurse gave me breath when the rules said otherwise. Now we give her justice, the kind that echoes. Cheers rippled low, not wild, but resolute, the air vibrating with the promise of motion. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady for the first time since the pager's summons. I thought I was alone in this, but promises, they call the lost ones home. The riders raised fists, the emblem of the broken chain glinting, a symbol of bonds reforged. Yet as the sun breached the tree line, casting long shadows across the asphalt, a new shadow loomed. A sleek black SUV pulled into the lot, its tinted windows reflecting the convoy like a dark mirror. Out stepped a sharply dressed man, Victor Lang, the hospital's shadowy consultant, ties to the mayor's inner circle woven tight. He scanned the scene with cold calculation, phone already dialing. Voss had called in reinforcements, the corruption's tendrils reaching to quash the uprising before it gained traction. Jacob's jaw tightened, sensing the shift. They're doubling down, he murmured to Emily, but so are we. The riders reformed ranks instinctively, a wall of leather and loyalty, the morning light gilding their resolve. This reckoning was far from over. It was accelerating, engines priming for the road ahead where truth would outride the lies. Emily's heart raced with a mix of fear and fire. The Oath's family had claimed her, and in their thunder she found her voice anew. The morning sun climbed higher, casting a relentless glare across the Mercy General parking lot, where the Iron Oath riders stood like weathered statues, their leather vests absorbing the heat like a second skin. Emily felt the warmth seep into her shoulders, chasing away the night's chill, but it did little to ease the knot of tension twisting in her gut. Victor Lang's arrival sliced through the fragile calm like a cold blade, his polished shoes clicking against the asphalt, suit impeccable despite the dust kicking up from the idling bikes nearby. He carried a leather briefcase, the kind that screamed boardrooms and backroom deals, and his eyes swept the crowd with the dispassionate scan of a man used to bending wills without raising his voice. Jacob shifted beside her, his hand brushing her arm in a subtle anchor, the faint scent of his aftershave, pine and resolve, cutting through the oily haze. Lang stopped a few paces from the semicircle of riders, his gaze locking on Jacob first, then drifting to Emily with a flicker of recognition that bordered on disdain. "Mr. Hale?" he said smoothly, his tone laced with the false warmth of a salesman. "I see you've brought quite the entourage. This is private property. Perhaps we can discuss this. Enthusiasm. Inside. Away from the spectacle." Marcus Kane stepped forward, his broad frame blocking the path like a living barricade, arms crossed over his chest. "No suits today, Lang. We're here for the nurse and the truth she's uncovered. Petitions don't lie. Over 200 voices saying your protocols kill more than they cure." The riders murmured agreement, a low rumble that vibrated through the ground, engines twitching as if eager to respond. Emily's pulse quickened, memories flooding back. The sterile admin room, Voss's curt dismissal, the box of her life dumped unceremoniously at the curb. She'd signed those papers with trembling hands, the ink a bitter seal on her exile. But now, flanked by this unlikely family, doubt cracked like dry earth under tires. Lang's smile didn't reach his eyes as he turned to her. "Miss Reynolds, your dedication is admirable, but actions have consequences. The board's decision stands. Liability concerns. Nothing personal. Reinstatement. Unlikely, given the associations." His glance at Jacob carried the weight of old prejudices. Bakers painted as pariahs in a town that favored clean collars and closed doors. She straightened, her voice steady despite the tremor in her knees. "Associations? Like saving a life when your rules would have let him die? That's not liability. That's the rot you're all protecting." From the hospital entrance, Dr. Voss emerged, flanked by 2 security guards whose badges glinted under the sun. His face was a storm cloud, tie still askew from the night's frenzy, and he jabbed a finger toward the group. "This ends now. Disperse, or we press charges. Trespassing, intimidation." Tyler Grant, the sergeant, positioned himself between the factions, his hand resting lightly on his belt, eyes weary but watchful. "Easy, Doc, we're keeping it civil. But these folks have a point. Petitions like that don't vanish with a wave." Lang interjected smoothly, pulling a sheaf of papers from his briefcase. "Legal counsel advises against escalation. Sign this waiver, Ms. Reynolds. Non-disclosure on your termination, and we'll consider a settlement. Quietly." The offer hung in the air like exhaust fumes, tempting and toxic. Emily's mind raced. A payout could rebuild her life, pay the bills stacking on her kitchen table, silence the whispers of failure that echoed her brother's unkept promises. But settlement meant complicity, burying the shortcuts, the diluted meds that felled patients in the night, the transfers that stranded the vulnerable. Jacob's grip tightened on her arm, his whisper gravelly and close. "Don't let 'em buy your silence. We've all got scars from deals like that. Wars end, but the betrayals linger." She met his eyes, seeing her own reflection. A woman forged in loss, now standing at the crossroads of surrender or storm. The riders sensed the pivot, closing ranks without a word, their presence a silent thunder. Lena edged closer to Emily, her voice a hushed murmur amid the rising tension. "My sister's story. Bad batch of painkillers, kid didn't make it. They called it unforeseen. Don't let that be you." Samuel Reed, the veteran, added his weight, prosthetic leg planted firm. "Fought for this country, came home to fight the system. Oath's my squad now, yours too if you ride with us." Their words wove a tapestry of shared pain, pulling Emily from the edge. She shook her head at Lang, the refusal burning bright. "No deal. Audit the books, reinstate me, or face the truth in the light." Lang's composure cracked, a vein pulsing at his temple as he snapped the briefcase shut. "You'll regret this. The mayor's office doesn't take kindly to disruptions." He turned on his heel, striding back to the SUV, Voss trailing like a shadow. The vehicle peeled out, tires screeching a warning, leaving a swirl of dust that settled slowly over the lot. Tyler exhaled, radio crackling with dispatch updates. "Captain's green-lighting a meeting. Tomorrow, neutral ground. But watch your backs. Suits like that play dirty." Jacob nodded, clapping the sergeant's shoulder. "Appreciate the fair shake, Tyler. Road's long. Debts like this don't forget." As the sun peaked, baking the asphalt into a shimmering haze, the group dispersed into planning huddles. Marcus unfurled a map on a bike seat, marking routes to City Hall, garages where allies waited with tools and testimonies. Coffee passed hand to hand, the bitter steam mingling with the scent of sun-warmed leather, forging bonds in the mundane. Emily joined a cluster near the edge, her hands sketching notes on the petition, demands for transparency, patient rights, an end to the shadows. Doubt lingered, a whisper of what-ifs, but the oath's loyalty drowned it out, a chorus of engines ready to roar. Yet as noon approached, a new ripple stirred. A news van crested the hill, antenna raised like a probing finger. Reporters spilling out with cameras rolling. Word had leaked, anonymous tips perhaps from within the hospital's disgruntled ranks. The exposure Emily had feared now beckoned, a double-edged blade that could vindicate or vilify. Jacob pulled her aside, the gravel crunching underfoot. "Media's a wild ride, truth or spin, depends on who steers. But we're in it now." She nodded, the fire in her chest flaring brighter, her brother's echo urging her forward. This wasn't just her fight, it was a convoy against corruption, promises colliding in the heat of the day. The cameras whirred to life, lights harsh against the riders' weathered faces. But Emily stepped into the frame unbidden, voice clear over the hum. "They fired me for saving a life. We're here to save the system from itself." Flashes popped, questions flying like gravel from tires, but the oath stood solid, a wall of honor in a world of waivers. Lang's threat echoed, but so did the thunder of unity, redemption accelerating, one resolute mile at a time. If this chapter stirs something in you, hit that like button below. It helps spread these stories of quiet courage far and wide. The midday sun beat down on the Mercy General parking lot like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt into a furnace that radiated heat in shimmering waves. Emily shielded her eyes against the glare, the news van's camera lights stabbing like spotlights on a stage she hadn't auditioned for. Reporters swarmed forward, microphones thrusting like spears, their voices a cacophony, slicing through the low hum of idling motorcycles. "Ms. Reynolds, is this a biker gang takeover?" one barked, her heels sinking into the gravel. Emily hesitated, the weight of exposure pressing on her chest, but Jacob's steady presence at her side, his hand a warm anchor on her elbow, grounded her. The scent of his leathers, sun-baked and familiar now, mingled with the sharp tang of camera flashes and the faint, acrid bite of news van exhaust. "No takeover," she said, her voice gaining strength as the words formed, projecting over the buzz. "Just people standing up for what's right. I saved a patient's life, and they fired me for it. This crew, They're here because loyalty isn't a liability. It's the cure your headlines miss. The reporters leaned in, scribbling furiously, while the Iron Oath Riders formed a loose perimeter, their faces a mosaic of quiet defiance. Marcus Kane's jaw set like forged steel, Lena's eyes narrowed in watchful solidarity. Samuel Reed shifted his weight, the soft creak of his prosthetic, a subtle underscore to the unfolding drama. No one shouted. Their silence was the loudest statement, engines occasionally revving in low affirmation, a rumble that vibrated through the earth like a heartbeat. Jacob stepped into the fray, his bandaged side pulling taut under his vest, but his posture unyielding. "We ride for the forgotten," he told the lens, a gravel in his tone carrying the echo of desert winds and long-haul nights. "Nurse Reynolds bent rules to keep me breathing when the system wanted me gone. Now we're bending it back, for her, for every soul they've shuffled aside." The lead reporter, a sharp-featured woman named Clara Voss, no relation to the doctor but the coincidence twisted like a knife, nodded, her recorder capturing every syllable, and the corruption claims, kickbacks, falsified reports. Jacob's eyes hardened, the sun glinting off the broken chain emblem on his chest. "Truth rides out eventually. We're just the convoy clearing the road." As the interview stretched, Emily felt the shift in the air, a cooling breeze whispering through the lot, carrying the distant scent of rain-soaked pines from the hollow's edges. Inside her, doubts flickered like shadows under the lights. What if the media twisted this into spectacle, painting the Oath as vigilantes and her as a pawn? Her brother's promise, to protect the road's lost souls, had always felt solitary, a quiet vigil in sterile halls. But here, amid the chrome and camaraderie, it bloomed into something communal, a family stitched from scars and shared roads. Nathan Cole, the young rider, hovered nearby, his anxiety etched in fidgeting hands. "This could blow up, Em. Good or bad?" She met his gaze, the warmth of the group enveloping her like engine heat. "Bad if we back down. We've got the miles ahead. Truth's our throttle." The cameras rolled on, capturing testimonials that peeled back the hospital's veneer. Lena spoke first, her voice steady as a wrench on a bolt. "My sister's patient, kid with a fever that turned fatal on cheap meds. They called it complications. I call it cutting corners for cash." Samuel added his layer, the sun casting long shadows across his lined face. "Veterans like me get the short end. Transfers that strand you hours from help. Lost too many brothers to that game." The reporters ate it up, phones buzzing with tips from anonymous sources, a nurse whispering of doctored logs, a supplier hinting at padded invoices. Tyler Grant watched from his cruiser, arms folded, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. "You're stirring the pot, Hale. Captain's already fielding calls from the mayor's office." Jacob clapped his shoulder, the gesture bridging badges and vests. "Stirring's how you clean it. We've pulled folks from floods together. This is just another current." By early afternoon, the lot pulsed with renewed energy, riders breaking into clusters to amplify the message. Marcus coordinated calls to allied crews across the state. His phone, a lifeline threading voices from dusty garages to rain-slicked highways. "Bring what you've got, stories, signatures. We're building a wall they can't wave away." Emily joined a huddle near the hospital doors, the concrete warm under her palms as she leaned against a bike. The petition had swelled to 300 names now, pages fluttering in the breeze like flags of defiance. But as the sun arced westward, casting golden hues over the scene, Victor Lang's SUV returned, this time flanked by two more vehicles, city officials, their plates gleaming with authority. Lang emerged, briefcase in hand, but his poise cracked under the media glare, sweat beading on his collar. "Ms. Reynolds," he called, voice amplified by a portable speaker, "this escalation serves no one. The board offers mediation, reinstatement pending review plus compensation, but disperse now or face injunctions." The reporters pivoted, lights swinging like search beams, capturing the standoff in high definition. Voss hovered behind him, face pale as overexposed film, while Harlan Greer lingered in the shadows of the entrance, his bulk a testament to unchecked appetites. Emily rose, heart pounding with the rhythm of idling engines, the air thick with the promise of storm. Mediation, that's code for more buried truths. Audit everything, meds, transfers, the kickbacks lining your pockets, or we'll ride this story to every doorstep in the hollow. Lang's retort died on his lips as a fresh wave of motorcycles crested the hill, dozens more from outlying chapters, engines roaring in a symphony that drowned his words. The oath swelled to near 200, chrome flashing like lightning on the horizon, dust clouds rising in their wake. Jacob's eyes lit with fierce pride, his whisper to Emily carrying over the thunder. See, promises call the thunder. The new arrivals dismounted in disciplined waves, adding their voices to the petition, their stories weaving a tapestry of neglect. Farmers denied timely care, families shattered by delays. Tyler's radio crackled urgently, but he held his ground, nodding to Jacob. This is getting big. Mayor's spooked. Wants a sit-down by evening. As the crowd coalesced, Emily felt the moral tide turning, the system's cracks widening under the weight of collective honor. Doubts receded like retreating fog, replaced by the unshakable bond of chosen kin, the oath's loyalty a shield against the corruption's chill. Lang retreated to his vehicle, the SUV's door slamming like a concession, tires spinning gravel in hasty flight. The media frenzy peaked, Clara Voss's crew packing up with promises of evening broadcasts that would echo across the airwaves. Emily stood taller, the sun warming her face, her brother's echo alive in the roar. Redemption wasn't a whisper in the dark, but a convoy cutting through the lies, accelerating toward justice's dawn. Yet as twilight edged the sky in bruised purples, a subtle undercurrent stirred. Whispers among the riders of deeper threats, anonymous calls warning of retaliation from the mayor's allies. Jacob pulled Emily aside, the lot's lights flickering on like hesitant stars. They're cornered, but corners breed desperation. Stay close, we ride as one. She nodded, the vibration of nearby engines syncing with her resolve, the scent of cooling metal and distant rain sealing the pact. This chapter of her story hurtled forward, promises colliding in the gathering dusk, unbreakable as the road itself. The twilight deepened over the Mercy General parking lot, draping the assembled Iron Oath riders in a veil of indigo shadows, the sodium lamps humming to life like hesitant fireflies against the encroaching dusk. Emily's breath came in measured draws, the air now laced with the cooling bite of evening and the faint metallic whisper of rain on the wind. The influx of new riders had transformed the space into a living fortress, nearly 200 bikes, arrayed in serried ranks, their chrome edges catching the last glimmers of sunset like drawn blades. Engines idled sporadically, a low growl underscoring the murmurs of strategy, while the news van's crew lingered at the periphery, capturing the swelling tide of resolve. Jacob stood close, his silhouette a steadfast pillar, the faint creak of his bandages a reminder of the debt that bound them all. Marcus Kane unfolded the petition on a makeshift table of saddlebags, its pages thick with ink and testimony, the paper rustling like dry leaves in the breeze. 350 now, he announced, his voice a steady anchor amid the group's quiet energy. Stories from every corner. Lost kin, a botched care. This goes to the mayor's desk by dawn. Lena nodded, her ponytail swaying as she tallied signatures, her grease-streaked hands a badge of honest labor. Samuel Reed leaned in, his prosthetic leg planted firm, adding a final note about a fellow veteran's endless wait for scans that never came. Emily traced the scrawls, each one an echo of her own silenced plea, the weight of her brother's promise to shield the road's weary, now carried by this chorus of chosen souls. From the hospital's shadowed entrance, Harlan Greer emerged at last, his portly frame flanked by Victor Lang and a cluster of suited aides, their faces pale under the lot's unforgiving lights. No security guards this time. The media's glare had stripped that armor, leaving only the raw edge of authority's bluff. Lang clutched his briefcase like a shield, but his earlier poise had frayed, eyes darting to the encircling bikes. "This has gone far enough," he declared, his voice amplified yet thin against the riders' unified hush. "The board concedes to a review, full audit, Ms. Reynolds' case reconsidered, but end this circus. The mayor intervenes personally at 8 a.m. Bring your delegation, then." Greer's nod was reluctant, sweat glistening on his brow, the unspoken fear of unraveling ledgers hanging heavy, the kickbacks exposed, the falsified transfers laid bare like wreckage on the roadside. Emily stepped forward, the gravel crunching under her shoes, her heart sinking with the distant rumble of an approaching storm. The cameras swung toward her, lights harsh and unblinking, but she met them head-on, the fire of vindication warming her veins. "A review? That's a start, but not the end. Reinstate me fully. No gag orders, no settlements to silence the truth and make it right for everyone. Your shortcuts failed." Jacob flanked her, his presence a quiet thunder, while Marcus presented the petition like a gauntlet thrown. Lang scanned the pages, his composure cracking further at the volume of voices, the raw humanity scrawled in hurried script. Tyler Grant observed from his cruiser, radio silent now, a subtle nod crossing his features, the law's own code recognizing the moral current too strong to dam. The concession rippled through the crowd, not in cheers, but in a profound exhale, the air vibrating with the promise of motion, deferred yet inevitable. Riders clasped forearms, sharing nods that spoke of battles won not with fists, but with unyielding honor, the scent of sun-faded leather and fresh coffee weaving through the group like threads of kinship. Nathan Cole, the young rider who'd voiced earlier doubts, grinned for the first time, clapping Emily's shoulder. "You steered us true, Em. This family's got your wheel covered." She felt the shift deep in her bones, the isolation of that termination morning dissolving like mist under the dawn, replaced by the unbreakable alloy of loyalty forged here, on this scarred patch of asphalt. As the officials retreated into the hospital's glow, the news crew wrapped their footage, Clara Voss approaching Emily with a business card extended like an olive branch. "This airs statewide tonight. Truth like yours cuts through the noise. Call if you need backup." Emily pocketed it, the card's edge sharp against her palm, a tangible step toward the broader road ahead. Jacob limped closer, his eyes reflecting the emerging stars, the pain in his side eased by the night's progress. "Oh, you more than breath now, nurse. This ride, it's ours." She smiled, the first genuine one since the page's summons, her arms wrapping briefly around his frame in a hug that bridged their worlds, the healer's steady hands meeting the warrior's scarred resolve. The convoy began to disperse under Marcus's direction, bikes peeling off in orderly waves toward waiting diners and motels on the hollow's edge, engines fading into the night like echoes of a receding storm. Emily mounted a borrowed ride with Lena, the seat warm from the day's heat, the throttle's hum a soothing lullaby as they rolled out. In her mind, the pieces aligned. Reinstatement loomed, but so did the deeper justice, an audit that would purge the corruption, honoring not just her, but every forgotten face in the system's shadow. Her brother's words resurfaced, clear as the rain-scented wind whipping her hair. "Take care of them, Em. They're family on two wheels." She'd kept that vow, and in turn they'd claimed her, turning personal redemption into a legacy of quiet courage. By midnight, Eldridge Hollow slept uneasily, the distant growl of scattered engines, a reminder of the thunder yet to come. Emily lay in her apartment, the walls no longer echoing with solitude but alive with the day's triumphs. The petition on her table, photos of Ethan seeming to grin wider. Dawn would bring the mayor's chamber, a final push where promises collided with power. But doubt had no foothold now. The Iron Oath's bond was her armor, a family chosen in the crucible of crisis, their loyalty the true medicine against a world's cynicism. As sleep claimed her, the faint patter of rain on the window sealed the chapter. Not an end, but a horizon stretching wide, where honor rode eternal. Thank you for riding along on this journey of unbreakable promises and chosen kin. If stories like Emily's and the Iron Oath's touch your heart, hit that subscribe button and join us for more tales of quiet heroism from the open road. We'd love to have you in the convoy.